In this video, I'll show you November 17th, 2023, but the timestamp in the video is dated for January 3rd, so it is unclear when exactly this interaction took place. Sometime within that time frame, Nevada-based First Amendment auditor Joshua Martinez was filming outside the Clark County Detention Center in Las Vegas when he was approached by two correctional officers on duty at the facility. Bear in mind that the green text that you will see in this episode is from the original video.
Doing all right. How about yourself?
Good. How you doing?
Pretty good.
Can I help you?
No, thank you. You're good.
All right. Can I ask you why you're taking pictures of the facility?
Excuse me?
Can I ask you why you're taking pictures of our facility? I'm not saying you can. I'm just asking if you...
Yeah, I know. I just don't feel like answering any questions.
Okay. All right. All right, sir.
What's that? Oh. What's that? Is this public or private? I can't even hear you guys. We're screaming. Is this public property or private?
Private, sir.
It's private?
Yes, sir.
Who's it owned by?
It's okay if you're out on the sidewalk, but now you're in our property.
But who's it owned by?
The county.
The county?
Which is owned by the people. As mentioned on many episodes of ATA, it is possible to be trespassed from public property, and many courts have recognized the state's right to control its own facilities, including the Supreme Court. In the 1966 Supreme Court case of Adderley v. Florida, Justice Hugo Black declared that, quote, "The state, no less than a private owner of property, has power to preserve the property under its control for the use to which it is lawfully dedicated." Although this conclusion was based on a Florida statute, many other courts have reached the same conclusion. But this does not grant custodians of public property the authority to arbitrarily trespass anyone for any reason. I have discussed the topic of time, place, and manner restrictions on free speech in a previous episode, which I will link in the info card above. But in short, trespassing an individual from public property must serve a legitimate governmental interest and must be based on the conduct of the citizen rather than the content of their speech. There are many circumstances which may influence a court's decision to uphold a trespass from public property, such as whether the exercise of free speech disrupts the normal operations of the public building, or whether the exercise creates a legitimate security concern. We will discuss whether Mr. Martinez could be legitimately trespassed in a moment, but it is important to recognize that government entities do have an established right to trespass citizens from their property in certain circumstances.
Call your supervisor out here, please.
Stop right there.
For
Stop
what?
right there. Stop right there, sir.
For what? Look, listen, the stuff may work on the inmates, but it isn't going to work on me. This isn't my first time here.
Right,
What's
sir.
your name and badge number?
Well, we're gonna trespass you. You're on private property.
I'm on private property and the Clark County owns it. The Clark County owns it, right? What's your name and badge number? As long as I'm not in any...
The correctional officers tell Mr. Martinez that they intend to trespass him from the property, but Mr. Martinez puts forth the notion that so long as he is not in a restricted area, he is allowed to film. The Adderley case draws many parallels to this interaction, and further examination of the ruling provides more details regarding the legality of filming a detention center. In the case, 107 people were arrested for protesting near the entrance of a jail and refusing to leave the premises after being ordered to do so by the local sheriff. 32 of the demonstrators sued the sheriff for violating their First Amendment rights, and the case eventually made its way to the Supreme Court. In the course of their protest, the demonstrators had blocked an access way that was reserved for transporting prisoners, and the court noted that, quote, "The record reveals that the sheriff objected only to the protesters' presence on that part of the jail grounds reserved for jail uses. The court also acknowledged the fact that no previous protesters had been granted access to the part of the jail the demonstrators were occupying, and plainly stated, quote, "The United States Constitution does not forbid a state to control the use of its own property for its own lawful, non-discriminatory purpose." This affirmed that the court did not consider the area to be a public forum, and the demonstrators were not entitled to First Amendment protections in that area. The court rejected the notion. People who want to propagandize protests or views have a constitutional right to do so whenever and however and wherever they please, and went on to uphold the prosecution of the protesters. 4 of the 9 justices dissented the ruling, including Chief Justice Earl Warren, and concluded that, quote, "The petitioner's conduct did not upset the jailhouse routine," end quote, and questioned whether the sheriff's conduct was actually content-neutral. The dissenters also noted that trespass laws are often abused by law enforcement in an effort to suppress free speech by stating, quote, "Today, a trespass law is used to penalize people for exercising a constitutional right. Tomorrow, a disorderly conduct statute, a breach of the peace statute, a vagrancy statute will be put to the same end." Although the Adderley case affirmed that certain parts of jailhouse property can be deemed a non-public forum and that the state can trespass citizens from its property if they cause a legitimate disturbance or security concern, it also affirmed the notion that areas of state facilities that are considered public forums are subject to First Amendment protections. Mr. Martin entered the jail property through an access way that is dedicated to members of the public, and the front door of the facility that he was approaching clearly states that it is a public building. It is highly unlikely that a court would find Mr. Martinez to be guilty of trespassing for recording a building that is clearly marked as intended for public use. And at no point during his time there did Mr. Martinez create a disturbance or prevent the jail from carrying out its routine business. After the 2 correctional officers entered the jail, Mr. Martinez continues recording and approaches the front entrance of the jailhouse lobby before being confronted by several other correctional officers.
How you doing?
Hey, you need to leave our property. You're trespassing.
What's that?
You need to leave our property. You're trespassing.
I'm trespassing?
Yeah.
Can you get your hand off my
No, I
off
cannot
camera?
get my hand off the camera.
How about this? We'll call a field officer out here.
Okay.
And when they get here, I could talk to them.
The last time I'm going to tell you, you need to
Look,
leave the
you need to
property.
get
You're
your hands off my
trespassing.
stuff.
You need to leave the property. You're trespassing.
You know what? Then formally trespass me. I'll take a formal trespass.
Okay, all right. Let's walk
you
you
don't
off the
know who I am,
property.
huh?
I don't care who you are.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
that's
you
fine.
can't be
I mean,
here.
I've been involved with a couple of federal lawsuits.
That's
so
absolutely wonderful. Has it ever worked out for
get
you?
your hand off of my camera.
Okay, I'm telling you to
I
leave
was
our
nice.
property.
This isn't your property. This is
You
the
need to
people's
leave our property.
Get your hand off my
You need to
camera.
leave our property.
Get your hand off my
You need
camera.
to leave our property.
Call the police out here now.
Well, you
Call
need to
Metro.
go.
Because you're a CO.
You need to go.
You're a CO.
You need
Get
to
your hands off my camera, sir.
All right, do we already call?
Yeah.
Already call patrol?
Call him.
Okay.
Call him.
Turn around, put your
Okay.
hands behind your back.
I'm not doing anything.
Turn around, put your hands behind your back.
The officers involved in this interaction thus far are correctional officers, not patrol officers, and the authority of correctional officers varies from state to state. The role and authority of prison guards has transformed over time, and their history extends back to the primordial foundations of criminal confinement. In the early 1900s, becoming a prison guard was a relatively easy process and did not require a certain level of education or supplemental training. Working conditions were often poor for prison guards, and little regard was held for the health and well-being of inmates or the conditions of penitentiaries. The expectations and reputation associated with guarding prisoners evolved as American society's ideas about criminal justice began to take a rehabilitative approach. By the 1950s, prisons became more humane and introduced programs focused on rehabilitation. Penitentiaries evolved into correctional institutions, and prison guards became correctional officers. The introduction of social workers, psychologists, and psychiatrists elevated the professional demands of the correctional officer. And with that elevation, correctional officers received pay increases, a professional work environment, and increased training and organization within their career field. The 1990s once again saw a change in the field of corrections as it came under attack by the general public for violations of civil rights, ineffectiveness of treatment, bureaucratic ineptitude, institutional overcrowding, and much more. The social outrage pressured the industry to adapt to the demands of modern society, and the field once again reevaluated the expectations of its officers and the professional standards associated with their duties. Today, the expectations of correctional officers include the traditional duties of enforcing rules and regulations that maintain security, accounting for the locations of inmates, inspecting facilities, searching for contraband, and writing reports, but also may include rehabilitative duties, such as acting as a community liaison for programs outside of prisons or facilitating communication between inmates and counselors. The field of corrections continues to evolve, and correctional officers now have a significant impact on the rehabilitative efforts in prisons and other detention centers. As the duties of correctional officers shifted throughout history, so too did their law enforcement authority. As mentioned before, the majority of correctional officers varies from state to state, and most states have drafted laws which dictate the limitations of that authority. For example, Virginia Code 19.2 through 81.2 outlines the training and educational requirements of correctional officers and limits their arrest powers. In Virginia, correctional officers may only detain suspects if they have reasonable suspicion they have committed a crime and have no power to arrest citizens. Instead, correctional officers must contact a sworn officer to effectuate the arrest. By stark contrast, Nevada Revised Statute 289.150 grants correctional officers the very same police powers as any other members of law enforcement in Nevada if Mr.
had committed a crime, then the correctional officers would have been well within their authority to arrest him. But that is not the case, and the correctional officers elect to detain Mr. Martinez until a field officer arrives on the scene.
How can I leave when you're holding onto my camera?
He asked you nicely to leave, but you would not leave. It's very simple. You're on private property.
Can't we have a cordial conversation about it?
No, we can't.
Do you know who sent me here? Do you guys know who sent me here?
I don't really care right now.
Okay, then
right
you will.
Now,
you will.
You will.
How you doing?
Good, sir. How are you?
Pretty good. So you're a field officer, I assume, right?
I am.
There you go. Thank you, Butler.
Yep.
Thank you. And so now you're aware of public photography, correct, sir? I don't even get an apology? Because if we can just settle this right now, I won't even go file a complaint. An apology, I'll be a man and put this behind me and go on about my business.
Terribly sorry, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I accept your apology.
Appreciate that.
Fair enough.
All right, guys. Well, thank you. Forbes.
Yep. Yeah, I'm Captain Force 5372.
Thank you.
That's my P number. Yep.
Thank you. And you,
Absolutely.
field officer?
Sergeant LeBaron, P number 9249. Sergeant Rolquist 4847.
Thank you. And yours?
Relay 7627.
Thank you. Thank you, fellas.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So I'll ask you, if you're going to stay and do this photography and stuff, right?
Right.
Just do me a favor.
I know I'll stay away from
that's a safety issue. We'll have to approach you again if you go over toward that area here. But if you're around this area here taking those photos and stuff, you're fine.
Right. Publicly accessible areas, I don't feel like going down that ramp anyways. Yeah. So I'm good. I'm like I said, I wanted to get a picture of the sunset with the flag. Yeah, no I wanted to just get those things. So all right.
So I need to ask you, do you still want to file a complaint or anything like that? I can take a complaint if you want to file a complaint.
You know what? I would rather him get the education this way. So if anything, if I do file a complaint, I'll just go online.
Okay.
And I'll file a complaint. But right now, the adrenaline's still going. My mind's all over the place. So
Understood. But I wanted to offer that to you, and then we'll have a discussion about the training and all that stuff and make sure that's addressed.
Okay. All right. Hey, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day. Take care.
Mr. Martinez was allowed to go free, and the officers left the scene without further incident. Mr. Martinez said later in the video that he was still unsure whether he would file a complaint against Officer Butler, but that he was definitely considering it. He went on to explain that he prefers the officer to be educated on First Amendment activity on the spot rather than through a lawsuit or complaint, but he needed to calm down before he made a decision to press the issue further. Be sure to follow Mr. Martinez's channel for further updates on his decision, and be sure to let him know that I sent you. You can find a link to his channel in the description below. Overall, Officer Butler and the other correctional officers get an F for violating Mr. Martinez's First Amendment rights, displaying a fundamental misunderstanding of public forums, and for maintaining a hostile and confrontational demeanor throughout the encounter. The correctional officers made no effort to determine whether Mr. Martinez's conduct was legal and chose to detain him before consulting with a field officer to ensure that a detainment was necessary. It is worth mentioning that correctional officers in Nevada, an 8-week certification course that does not appear to include education on constitutional rights, and it seems rather negligent for the state of Nevada to grant them arrest powers without proper training. However, that does not excuse the actions of the correctional officers, and it is clear that none of them were thoroughly educated on First Amendment protected activities. The officers decided to detain Mr. Martinez despite their lack of education, and carelessly dismissed Mr. Martinez's claim that he was not doing anything illegal. It would have been in the best interest of everyone involved to contact a superior officer who was more equipped to handle the situation rather than immediately detaining Mr. Martinez, and I sincerely hope that these officers were formally educated. After this encounter, Captain Forbus gets an A+ for ordering the correctional officers to release Mr. Martinez, upholding Mr. Martinez's right to record the facility, and maintaining a courteous and professional demeanor throughout the interaction. Captain Forbus handled this encounter exceptionally well, and his willingness to take a complaint against Officer Butler on the spot demonstrated his dedication to ensuring that Mr. Martinez's concerns were heard. The captain also managed to significantly de-escalate the encounter without being rude or forced. Captain Forbus deserves recognition for his excellent policing tactics and respect for constitutional rights, and I commend him for his professional conduct and dedication to public service. Mr. Martinez also gets an A+ for exercising his rights peacefully and respectfully, retaining a proper balance between complying with the officers and asserting his constitutional rights, and maintaining a calm and collected demeanor throughout the encounter. Despite what was no doubt infuriating conduct from Officer Butler, Mr. Martinez never became aggressive with the officers, and although he did use some profanity to make his point, he stayed within the bounds of constitutionally protected speech. It could be argued that Mr. Martinez should have exercised the right to remain silent more diligently, but nothing he said was inherently incriminating, and most of his speech was dedicated to informing the officers that he was exercising a constitutionally protected activity. I commend Mr. Martinez for refusing to allow Officer Butler's conduct to provoke an emotional response and for engaging in a productive dialogue with Captain Forbus. Be sure to take a moment to give Mr. Martinez's channel your support and let him know that his conduct is appreciated. Thank you very much for watching the video. Subscribe our channel for next video.